A very good morning, everyone. I hope that you are doing well. Also, welcome to the lab class for week 12. We're left with three more weeks to go for the semester to finish up. So this is week 12. We've reached the end of it. So week 13, 14, 15, 3 more weeks to go. So my request for you all is for CIN535, you just have to work a bit more hard for the next 3 weeks, and then you are done with the course. There's no final exams with it. Okay, now in today's class, we will continue from where we left off last week. Last week, you were introduced to CSS. With it, you had learned some second form of syntaxes, and you have learned about CSS selector, okay, and declarations. The syntax is basically, it includes a selector and a declaration. And in the declaration, you have two more elements, which they are called property and values. In total, there are three types of CSS: inline, internal, and external. Now, inline is used to control a specific CSS element. Internal is used to control the styling of a web page. External is used to control the styling of an entire website with the use of a single file. Then we touched base on CSS, and finally we looked at CSS color in terms of background, text color, and border color. So the files that we had gone over last week are already uploaded under the week 11 section of the Moodle shell. So those of you who missed out, please feel free to go and open up those files, have a look, and try to reiterate all those things that we have done in the lab. Okay, and you may do it by looking at the lab recording under week 11. So week 12, yesterday we had gone over our lecture notes. So the lecture notes, we've already finished up with all the lecture notes so far, so which is quite good. It gives us ample time to work on practical stuffs. Basically, that means more time for you to learn about website development, which is a good thing. Now, if you are able to do well in your assessments and you feel that you have learned website development very, very well, what you can do is you can make websites and try to sell them off. Okay, it's an easy way to make money. And sometimes if you are unsure a lot of things, there are a lot of resources on the web. And also, I'm always around to help you out should you be stuck on any specific thing when you're creating websites. All right. Now, the website that I would suggest for you to do, for you to go over to learn few things is w3schools.com. Okay, so w3schools.com is owned by W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. They are the basically they're the initiators of the web. They allocate protocols, they allocate changes with the web design and web development stuff. So please do go over the tutorials on w3schools.com. So at the same time, while we're learning HTML and CSS, in line with that, you can always go and open up w3schools.com and look at the HTML and CSS tutorials from there. Now, most likely, whatever things you learn in the class will be very similar to what you learn in w3schools.com, but it covers a wide spectrum of topics altogether. All right, now in today's class, we'll be looking at background color. So we'll look at doing a plain background color. We worked on it last week. We'll continue from there though. Okay, so we'll look at background color. Now with background color, you can always go and add background image. So we will do that as well. We'll work with allocating margin and paddings. Moreover, we have height, width, CSS text, and right at the very end of the class, we'll go and create one of the very important components that we discussed in yesterday's lecture, the navigation bar. Okay, so we'll go and look at how you can go around navigating things to the use of a navigation bar. So without further delay, I would suggest for you to, can you go quickly and open up the CSS folder that we had created last week. So I have it here. Okay, so the CSS folder, and this is where I will allocate all my files. I'd like you to do the same though. Okay, so what you'll do next is, now you have opened that up, now just have a look at it. So you had external CSS files, internal CSS files, okay, inline, and then you have a style sheet, okay, a CSS style sheet with a which has been created. Now we'll leave those files as it is over there, and we'll create a new set of files. At the same time, you'll get a good practice with the HTML skeleton. And moreover, we'll start coding things properly. So quickly, can you go and open up a notepad? Now, the very first thing that I'd like you to do is, can you go and save the notepad and save it inside the CSS folder and give the name as CSS background. Now, CSS, okay, underscore background dot HTML. CSS underscore background dot HTML. And as soon as you have created that file, can you go and create the HTML skeleton? Please keep a good alignment of all your text, please. The coding that you're doing, ensure that they're well aligned. So in your HTML skeleton, you always open up with a doc type declaration, followed by your opening and closing HTML tags. Then you have head tag, opening and closing head tags. Now within the head tag, you have your title tags. And then next up, you have the body. Now in the body section, what I would like you to do is very quickly, let's go and create a heading. Heading 1, and at the same time, let's go and create a paragraph as well. You have 2 minutes to do that. All right, so I hope that you have done that. So next up, what I would want you to do in your heading 1, can you go and give a heading, for example, okay, let's give a heading as background color. And a paragraph, let's say, this page has a light blue color background. Now the title of the page, let's also give the title as CSS background, the same name as the title of your HTML page. You have a minute to do this. All right. Now, so far what we have done is we have done this. Okay, so we have saved the file, CSS background. So I'll open it up. So you should have a very simple web page whereby you have a heading and you have a paragraph, okay, and it looks plain white in color. If you look at the tab, so the title is CSS background. Now, just by looking at these elements, by now you should be able to identify what things have been included in the page that you have created. All right. Now, let's go and start adding CSS to it. Now, this time what we'll go and do is we will go and insert a internal, not inline, but internal style sheet. Let's work with internal, becomes easy to work with internal, especially if you have a single web page. So what I will do is right after the title tag, I'll go and create a opening style tag followed by a closing style tag. Remember, it needs to be within the head tag. Okay, so once you've done that, let's go and add some styling to it. Now, what does our paragraph say? This, pardon me, this page has a light blue color background. So let's go and add a background color, which is light blue. Okay, I will indent a bit towards the right inside to style tag. So we'll give a selector. So what are we selecting? Which HTML element are you selecting? So we are selecting the body with an open and close parenthesis. So I'll shift it down a bit somewhere here. Okay. And then I need to go and insert in the property and the I need to go and insert the declaration. Okay. So in the declaration, what all things do you have in the declaration? The property and the value. So the property is background hyphen color, and the value is light blue, is a single word, light blue, followed by a semicolon, Control S to save. Let me repeat that. Inside the style tag, you have a selector. So you're selecting the body element. So inside the body element, okay, you have background color blue, which is light blue, and then Control S to save. So once you have saved that up, you will go back to the browser and refresh your browser. Changes to light blue in color. Pretty simple, right? Okay, so I'll give you a minute to catch up if you haven't typed that out. You have 1 minute with you. All right, so this is how you go around changing the background color. Okay, so we'll save this up, and the next exercise that we're going to work on is changing the background, but instead of having a color, let's have an image. Okay, so I will ask you to go to file and then do a save as, and this time you will save the file as css background another underscore and say image dot html, css underscore background underscore image dot html. Remember, this is a HTML document. Only when you're creating a style sheet, then you will actually go and do a .css. Otherwise, this is an HTML document. And then you'll save this up. Okay, if you look at the name, CSS background image, okay, that's the file that you just saved. So the title, let's change it, CSS background image, Control S to save. So we will go and remove the body selector from there, Control S to save. Now in the body section, you have background color. Now change background color to background image. And paragraph, this page has a light blue color background. Now write down this page has a image based background. So has an image based background. Control S to save. All right, so once you've done that, let's go and open up the file on a browser and see how does it look. So CSS background image. Okay, now the difference between the two, first one has a light blue color. Look at the title, CSS background. This one, CSS background image, no background color. It says to insert in an image. So what I would ask you to do next is quickly go into your browser and download a very simple image, anything. So I will download an image, something nature based, okay, and I will save it inside the very same CSS folder. No, not this image. I have some stamp on it. This looks better, I guess. So right click, save as, and then you have to save it inside the CSS folder that we are working with. Okay, now what is the name that you're going to give? Give the name as img, okay, for image. And you need to ensure it's a JPEG file. You have 2 minutes. Okay, so once you've done that, you will go to your HTML page. Now inside the style tags, you will actually go and call out your selector. The selector that I will be calling out is again body. Remember, you're trying to apply a background color to the entire of the website. Okay, so you will select your body tag. You need to find, actually the thing is you need to understand why we're selecting body, why not H1 or P. Because if you would select H1, what will happen is it will only go and apply a background color to the heading. if you actually go and select just the paragraphs, it will actually go and apply a background color and image to the paragraph. So when you select body, it's basically the entire of that web page. So that's the logic behind it. So again, let's go back. So you have inserted in your body selector, open and close parenthesis. This time, instead of background image, you'll type down background hyphen color. Sorry, previously you've written down background color. So this time you'll write down background image rather. And then you give a colon. This is how it works. And you write down URL. Okay. And in brackets, you'll give the name of your image. So remember the name of the image, img.jpg. It's a JPEG file. If you're not so sure what is your file type, always go into the image, do a right click, click on properties. So it's a .jpg file. Okay, so image.jpg. So therefore, in quotes, you have img.jpg. And then straight after the closing bracket, you have a semicolon, Control S to save. Let me repeat that. Okay, so inside your style tag, your selector is body element. After that, you have open and close parenthesis. So within the parenthesis, you have background hyphen image, colon, URL, in brackets, inside quotes, img.jpg. Why img? That's the name of the file. Okay, and lastly, you finish off with a semicolon. So Control S to save. Go back to your browser, F5 to refresh. Okay, so my page is quite small. It's not showing the entire thing. So generally, when you are giving a background image, okay, if you want the entire thing to be shown, so you need to shorten up the image. Okay, so that's how generally you go around putting in a background image. Now, how do you shorten up the image? Those are the skills that you've learned in photopea.com. Am I right? Yes, I am. All right, moving on. Anyone here needs more time? Anyone needs more time? No? All right. Okay, thank you. Next up, what we're going to do is we'll work with borders. Now, last week we did work with borders. We talked about solid border and dashed border. There are close to about 10 different types of borders. Okay, so we will go and work on them today, all of them at once. Okay, so let's go and do a save as of this particular notepad file. So file, save as, and this time you'll save your file as CSS borders. .html. Do not forget your HTML. CSS borders.html. Save the document. Okay, to ensure that you are always on the correct file, always check the file name. So CSS borders. Now, from here, what I will ask you to do is inside your style tags, can you go and remove your body selector and all the declaration associated with it. After that, go to your body tag and remove everything from there as well. So once you've done that, can you go and insert 11 paragraphs in there? So this is my first set of paragraph tag. Now I need to have 11 of those. So you can directly go and do a copy paste. Okay. So this is the first one. So 10 more. all of them to be in line with one another. All good? I'll give you a minute to do that. You might need to be a bit fast because we have a lot of exercises. We'll finish the class at 10:30. So we'll take on exercises till wherever we can reach, all the way down to 10:30. All right. I have a feeling we might not be able to finish up all the exercises that we want to in today's class, but let's give it a go. Okay. So in your first paragraph, write down this is a dotted border, full stop. Second paragraph, this is a dashed border, full stop. Next paragraph, this is a solid border, full stop. After that, this is a double border, full stop. Next up, this is a groove border, full stop. Next, this is a ridge border. So these are the different types of borders which we have. This is a inset border, full stop. Next up is this is an outset border, full stop. After that, this paragraph has no border. This paragraph has a hidden border. And finally, this paragraph has a mixed border. Control S to save. You have 2 minutes to get this done. Okay, moving on. So this is what we're going to do. Okay, now let's also go and change the title. and give the title of the page as CSS borders. Now, have a look at your paragraph. At the moment, we want to allocate the different types of borders for each and every paragraph. Remember how we did it for the body tag? And last week we did for the paragraph tags. Now, if I would select just the paragraph element as the selector, what will happen is if I apply changes to one of the paragraphs, all of them would have the same change. Let's try it out. Okay, for example, opening and closing paragraph, paragraph selector with opening and closing parentheses. Okay, so let's go and give in a property. Okay, so our property is border hyphen style, and let's say dotted followed by a semicolon. I have a look at this. So once I save this up and I go to the browser, let me open up that file very quickly. Do you see all of them have a dotted border? Now we don't want to do that. We want to ensure that each of those paragraphs has a different border. So this is where we have the different type, what do you call this? The different types of selectors coming in. Okay, remember we had said there are two selectors which gives unique identification to common elements in CSS, and these are called IDs and classes. So what we're going to do is we are going to allocate IDs to these paragraphs. So in your opening paragraph tag, after you have closed it off, okay, oh sorry, before you have closed it off, so PID is equals to, let's name it to dotted. Okay, and Control S to save. Dotted, D-O-T-T-E-D. Okay, so if I have to call this out now, so this is what I could say: hashtag dotted. And if I would go and refresh your browser now, do you see only the first paragraph has that particular dotted border? All right, so these are what IDs and classes are used for. Now, going back to classes, if I am allocating a class, I can do that as well. So class is equals to, and this time let's call it as dashed. Okay, Control S to save. So in the style tag, I'll have to call out the class. So how do I call out the class? Is by a full stop or period sign and dashed, open and close parentheses, and inside those parentheses, let me indent this bit to the right, and inside those parentheses you write down border hyphen style colon, and it's dashed semicolon. And then go back to your browser and F5 to refresh. Simple. Okay, do these two, and then we'll go on and do the rest of it using a ID. Okay, I would prefer an ID instead of a class. Why? Because you can allocate a class as well that will still do the same thing. Okay, so what you normally do is, if you're controlling the structure of the website, use classes. If you're controlling the elements of website, use IDs. That makes your work way more organized. But you can use either of it at any time, completely your choice. We have a minute to get these two done. After that, I will ask you to go and insert IDs for all these paragraphs. So the third paragraph will have ID is equals to solid, and then ID is equals to double, ID is equals to group, reach, insert, outside, no border or hidden border, and mixed border. Okay, get that done, people. where it says this paragraph has no border, can you go and put the ID to ID is none, eh? That's the actual value. So let's put in the value. You have 3 minutes to get this done. Done, everyone? Okay, so let's go and start adding styling to all this. Okay, so our next paragraph is a third paragraph. So we have allocated a ID called solid. So this is what we are going to write in there. Okay, so let's give a space. So ID, you call it out by the using the word hashtag and then solid. All right, and open and close parenthesis. So in it, you'll have border hyphen style colon solid followed by semicolon, and then Control S to save. Go back to the browser, F5 to refresh. Now, this is what I want you to do next. Just like you have it for solid, do it for double groove, ridge, inset, outset, none, hidden, and the mixed portion. That is what I will discuss. The rest of it, I want you to do it on your own. Very quickly get that done. I'll give you 10 minutes to get that done. If you have any questions or queries, let me know. 10 minutes. Okay, thank you, Seema, for your question. So you asked, why have we used class for the dashboarder? Now, I've just used an example just to show you that you can use either ID or class. So you can also use an ID instead of a class, for sure. You can do that. So it's just for the purpose of showing you, just give you an example that you can either use ID or class for any of those borders. Does that answer your question, Seema? Okay, thank you. It's just an example that I've used. You have 5 more minutes to go. 2 more minutes, people. Okay, shall we continue now? And the next thing that I wanted to focus on is on the mix borders. Okay, now what happens in mixed border is you can combine all the different types of borders that you have on top here, from hidden all the way to dotted. Okay, so what you may do here is you may have or you can rather go around inserting different types of borders. So this is what happens. So the order is as such: top, right, bottom, left. In other words, what type of border would you like to add on top? So in my case, let's say I'm adding dotted, followed by a space. And then on the right hand side, dashed, followed by a space. On the bottom, solid, followed by a space. And on the left hand side, I would have double, okay, double border. And then I would do a semicolon, and you have the parenthesis, closing parenthesis. Let me repeat that. When you're adding a mixed border, so alignment is as such: top, right, bottom, left. So on top, I've added a dotted border. On right, I've added a dashed border. On bottom, I've added a solid border, and I've added a double border on the right hand side. So Control S to save. Let's have a look at the very last border that I have. There you go. Do you see that? Now, do try it out. You have a minute with you. Okay, moving on. Now, let's say you have only allocated to border. Look at the solid border that you have. There you go. So this is my solid border. Now, what I want to do with the solid border, let's say I want to increase the width a bit. Okay, so this is how you can go and increase the width. Let's try it out. So solid, this is where it is. What I can do is after that semicolon, I will go into the next line, and to control the border width, your selector, sorry, your property over there would be is border hyphen width followed by colon, and then you'll give in your value. So let's say 5 pixels, semicolon, Control S to save. So once I've done that, I can always go into my browser, refresh it up. You'll see that the border becomes thicker. Okay, at the same time, what you can also do is you can change the color of your border. Okay, so if I have to change the color of my border, so what I will do is moving on to the next line. Okay, so border hyphen color, let's change the color to red followed by a semicolon. So Control S to save, go back to the browser, F5 to refresh. So I'm able to change the border color to red. All right, all good, everyone? Now, can you do the same? And the same time, can you go and change the border width of the dashed border to 10 pixels and the color to be green? Dashed border, 10 pixels, color green. Do that, people. You have 2 minutes with you. By the way, it's near to 10 o'clock. We have 30 more minutes. It's all right. Take it slow. I want you to learn well. I want you to know all the elements very, very well. Okay, so that when you're working on your project too, you are well versed with what all options you have. All right. Well, okay, everyone. So what you were supposed to do in here was you had to go and insert a border width of, what size did I say? 10 pixels? 10 pixels. And at the same time, a border color of green, followed by a semicolon. So once you do that, please always feel free to go and refresh your page, and this is what you end up with. So this is the most you could do with borders. Okay, there are no other things apart from this, from border, from styling up our borders. Okay, so the next thing that we will jump into straight after border is something called as padding. So what I would ask you to do is, can you go onto your notepad file, go into a save as, notepad file, go into a save as, and save the file name as css padding.html. Done that, everyone? So once you've done that, all the CSS codes that you have within your style text, can you remove them up? Inside the body tag, can you also go and remove your paragraph and Control S to save? So after that, what I would like you to do is, can you go and insert a heading 1, opening and closing heading 1. At the same time, can you go and insert a single paragraph? Change the title from CSS borders to CSS padding, Control S to save. Once you've done that, go back to H1 and give your heading as using CSS padding to control space in a web page. Lowercase s for space, using CSS padding to control space in a web page. And with the paragraph that you have, okay, write down, let's control padding in this paragraph, full stop. Now, there are two things. We have margins and then we have paddings. So these two do quite opposite, but both of them, they control the space on a website. So what happens is in a margin, let's say you have a paragraph. So the margin controls all the space outside that paragraph border. Padding, on the other case, does the opposite. What it does is you have a paragraph, let's say, so padding controls all the space inside the defined border. Okay, so we'll work with padding and you'll see how it actually works. Now, to make it more visible, what we'll do is very firstly, we'll go and insert a 1 pixel solid black border to our paragraph. So how do we do that? Okay, simple. Okay, what you'll do is you will define your selector, that is the paragraph P, paragraph tag, and then open and close parenthesis. Now inside that, what you will do is you will allocate a width. So what you can do over here in this case is instead of writing down border width, border style, and border color, you can get all of it done using a shorthand. So what is a shorthand? So a shorthand is simply, instead of using 3 different sets of properties and declarations, you can just use one. All right, so we've already used our selector as a paragraph, the P tag, and let's apply a shorthand. So with shorthand, you'll just say border and then colon. So first of all, you'll allocate the width, which is, let's say, 2 pixels. Okay, give a space. Style, let's say a solid border, and the color, let's place the color as blue, followed by semicolon. So selector is paragraph. This is your property. This is your value. All right, 2 pixel, solid blue. So Control S to save. Can we go and open that up? There you go. Take a minute to get this done. Okay. Now, once you've done that, let's go and start controlling some padding. So with padding, okay, so you have padding top, padding right, padding bottom, and padding left. You can have all 4 of them in separate, or you can use shorthand, what we have just used right now. You can have padding, and then you can allocate some pixels for top, right, bottom, left, just the order: top, right, bottom, left. First do it individually, and then we can use the shorthand. So first of all, use a padding hyphen top colon, and let's apply a 50 pixel padding to top. Control S to save. Now that means you will, in the border that you have, so within the border, you should have some space above the text that you have. Have a look at this. There you go. Do you see that? So you applied a padding within the border. If it was margin, so it will apply space outside that border. Now, at the moment it's padding, so you're controlling space within a defined border. So 50 pixels, okay, on top. Now let's go and allocate close to about, let's say, 30 pixels to the right. Let's see what happens. Padding, hyphen right. Let's apply a 30 pixel space within. Control S to save. Now over here, you might not see much changes because you already have some space. You see that? You have quite a lot of space towards the right-hand side. So 30 pixels would just be somewhere here. So the text would not move in this case, unless your entire paragraph was it was filled up. Okay, so don't worry much about it. Next up, let's apply a padding bottom. So that means on the bottom side, you should get some sort of space. Okay, so within the border. So padding hyphen bottom, and then let's apply a space of 100 pixels. That means double of what you had on top. Okay, if we would go there and refresh our page, this is what we get. See, double the space within the border, but at the bottom. Now you must be thinking, why are we learning all these things? Now this is how elements are controlled within a website. How do you think that something is somewhere in the middle of the screen? You have some space, something is on the left, something on the right, something in the center, something on top, something at the bottom. This is how it's controlled using padding and margin. And these are very important stuffs. If you don't know how to control padding and margin, you will not be able to control a lot of things on your website. Okay, so also at this very same time, let's give a padding top. And let's sorry, top we've done, so padding left rather. Let's give a space of, let's say, we already have given 30 that side. Let's give 120 pixels. And refresh itself. Do you see that? If you want to get something to the center, how do you do that? Now, this is the thing. At the moment, we are inserting values using pixels. In other words, we are just controlling the element of the screen with some with a defined screen size. In other words, whatever we're having a look in our screen size, that's how we're doing it. However, you may note that screen sizes may be different at different point in time. For instance, you may use a website in a mobile phone. You may use a website on 11-inch screen, sometimes on a 15-inch screen, which is the standard laptop size, sometimes 17, 19, and so forth. So in order to ensure that your website matches all screens, what you can do is you can always go and give your sizes for your paddings and margins in percentages. For instance, have a look at this. So if I want my paragraph here to be in the center of the screen, to start from the center, what I can do is my padding left, I can give a size of 50%. So 50% means half. Okay, now remember, with the screen size, you're not controlling the height, you're controlling the width always. It means the left and the right. So 50%, let's go and refresh up. Do you see? It starts somewhere in the middle. If you intend to start somewhere here, let's say 25% of the screen space, so you can have that as 25%. There you go. You see that? So this is the 25% space of the screen. Now do note that when you're using percentages, the correct term that we call it is responsive. Responsive means your website would respond to the appropriate screen size. So if your screen size changes, your website will be, if you have allocated 50%, will be somewhere in the center. If you have allocated 50 pixels, it will only take 50 pixels of that particular screen size. So to be on the safe side is always best to ensure that you give the width dimensions in terms of percentages. Okay, we'll learn more about this now. With responsive, we will not cover responsive much in CIN535. In fact, it is mostly covered in CIN628, where you do web, internet and web-based programming. Okay, but still it's good to learn about these things. All right, so this is what you have in terms of your paddings. Now let's use shorthand. Now what I will do is, if I have to apply shorthand, I can actually eliminate all these and use just padding and allocate the size. Now for do this, let's go and insert another paragraph right at the very bottom, and let's control padding in this paragraph using shorthand. Also note that also note that basically you have two paragraphs, so we'll allocate an ID and call it as shorthand. You can give any name that you'd like to, totally up to you. And let's go and call it out. So how do you call out a ID? To the use of a hashtag. So this will be shorthand, open and close parenthesis, and let's go and control the elements in there. Okay, so we'll call it as padding, and with this let's start applying some changes. So it's top, right, bottom, left. Okay, so the top space, let's give it as 50 pixels. Now top and height you can always give in terms of percentages. However, your width, okay, left and right, when you're doing in terms of responsive, you're doing for a responsive website, that is something that you'll always need to apply in percentages. Okay, so 50 pixels, give a space. Now for right, let's give it in terms of percentages. So for right, let's give it as 25% space to the right hand side. And then after that, your bottom, let's give it as 100, let's give it at 75 pixels. And for your left hand side, let's give it as 50%, followed by a semicolon. Control S to save, go back to your browser, F5 to refresh. Do you see that? So this is 25%, this is 50% controlled on the other side. So that's on padding, people. Okay, I'll give you about 2 minutes, and after that we'll work with margins and then finish off the exercise for today. Well, good, everyone. Moving on, let's go and look at margins. So we'll go into our notepad file, do a file and save as, and name the file as CSS margin. So margin works the very same way as you have with padding. So CSS margin.html, it works the very same way as you have padding, but it only controls the space outside the defined border. All right. So once you have that, what I want you to do next is your title, change it to CSS margin, Control S to save. After that, can you go and remove all of the codings inside your style tags? Okay. And your H1 would remain the same, but let's go and write down using CSS margin to control space in a website. First paragraph, let's control margin in this paragraph. And if you would go and kindly open up CSS margin web page. Now, once you've done that, this is pretty simple. So inside our style tag, let's use our very first selector, that is paragraph, needs to be indented to the right, open and close parenthesis. So once you're there, okay, now in it, first of all, you will go and allocate a border. So border, let's say 2 pixels, space, what type? Let's have it solid border, and the color to be red. Semicolon, Control S to save. Once you've done that, can you go to your browser, refresh, and see if you actually have a red border in there? Yes, I do. You have a minute to catch up. All right. After that, what you're going to do is you'll go and apply a margin top. So just like we had padding top, so here you have margin hyphen top. Let's go and apply a space of, let's say, 100 pixels. Control S to save. And then from thereafter, go to your browser, F5 to refresh. So see 50 pixel space for both the paragraphs. Why for both? Because both of them are labeled as P at the moment. So P is picking in. Okay. Emma is controlling the space outside the border. After that, you'll have a margin to the right hand side. So margin right. This time, let's control in terms of percentages so that you are getting, so that you get well versed with it. Let's say you want 25% space. That means 25% of the margin to be allocated to the paragraph. And what will happen at 25%, that means would be something like this. Do you see that much space on the 25%? If I put in another 25%, so that means it should start from, your margin should start from somewhere over here. So Control S to save on your notepad. After that, let's go and allocate a margin on the bottom. So margin hyphen bottom. colon, so another 20, bottom would not be 25%. Why? Because the percentages can only be controlled for the width and not the height. So top and bottom deals with height, left and right deals with width. So for the bottom, let's allocate 50 pixels, Control S to save, go to your browser and then refresh. So it's already 50% over here. Why 50%? Because if you have a look at this is blank, this is 100 pixels. If you want to have more space in between these, so the value needs to be bigger. So instead of 100, let's have 150, then you'll see some changes in there. There you go. Do you see that? That's how it works. And finally, let's go and allocate a margin left. And this time, let's say 25% as well. There you go. Okay, and now let's go and apply a shorthand change. Okay, so for shorthand, now we have given the ID as shorthand, so we'll use it accordingly. So how do you call out a shorthand? So hashtag shorthand, and then open and close parentheses. Okay, so you will say margin and then colon. After that, let's go and allocate the top, right, bottom, and left. So this time, let's have a top margin of 50 pixels in there. Okay, and at the same time, sorry, no semicolon, let's have a margin right of 50%. That means it would finish up somewhere at the 50%. Okay, and then a margin bottom of, it wouldn't really matter how much space we apply, but let's go and apply 200 pixels because nothing is underneath this particular paragraph, and a margin left of 30%, followed by a semicolon. So margin 50%, sorry, 50 pixels space on top, 50% on the right hand side. Okay, 200 pixels at the bottom and 30% on the left hand side, and Control S to save. After that, if you would go to a browser, F5 to refresh, this is what you get. See 50%, that means there's 50% of space on the right hand side, and then 30% space, remember it's outside the border, 30% space on the left hand side. So that's how it's controlled. So you have 2 minutes to catch up. Okay, so it's 10:27 and we have caught up with time today. And also, sorry, pardon me, my network is a bit fluctuating. We got disconnected a while ago. So this is where we'll close off the class for today. So what I expect from you when you come into the class next week, Thursday. Now, next week, Thursday, we're not going to have lecture class. In fact, in our next week, Thursday's class, we'll continue with CSS because we've already finished up with all our lecture notes. So that would be way more interesting compared to what we have in our lecture classes. So please try to learn all that you have learned with HTML and CSS, the different types of CSS and all these, because in next week's class, we'll be looking at how we go around creating a navigation bar where all these skills will be deemed as necessary. So this is where we'll stop for today. I thank you very much for giving in your time and your effort to attend today's class. And those of you who will be watching this recording a bit later onwards, thank you for feeding in your efforts as well. Till then, I wish you all the very best. Keep up with your project too, and also try to finish up your lecture-based quizzes. Till then, take care, stay safe. See you all next week. Have a blessed upcoming weekend, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.